7:36, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 89.7 WTN. Welcome on in to your Monday. It is January 13th of 2025. Hope you're doing well, along with Joe and Jones. KGB, Jeff Malinoff. I'm Dan Mandis. Jonathan Fahey is joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Jonathan, always great to have you on. First, let's talk about politics. Jack Smith, or as Donald Trump likes to say, deranged Jack Smith, resigned over the weekend. Now there's a big conversation as far as what to do with this report that he has compiled on Donald Trump. And so let's talk about this. This is all about the classified documents case. In my opinion, of course, more lawfare, yours as well. But Jack Smith resigning and, as Donald Trump says, fleeing town, how big of a deal is this to you?
The fact that he's leaving is not a big deal. That was expected. I think what is interesting, what's most important, is this report that was issued that the DOJ, the current DOJ, is trying to get released, and the not just the Trump people, but the other defendants in the case are wanting to keep it sealed. And I think that's an interesting issue because this DOJ only has a week left to win this battle in court. And my overall thought on this is, under the special counsel, the rule or the law, they have to issue a report, but it doesn't have to be public. And the reason they're typically, or when they are public, is usually when a special counsel decides not to charge anyone, and they could sort of go through the reasonings and things like that. But here he's really vetted everything in multiple pleadings. So to release this, we know what it's going to look like, which is another hit piece on Donald Trump. It's a political document. I mean, half of their pleadings have looked more like press releases than legal pleadings. So I think, if they don't get it done in the next few days, I think it will stay sealed, and I think that's in the public interest. And people really need to look at their two currently charged defendants in Mar-a-Lago that have a right to, a fair trial, and having dirt about them come out, or in a way that's, I would argue probably biased against them, is not going to help them get a fair trial if that case ultimately goes to trial.
Well, and we've seen a lot of this stuff anyway. I mean, they released a couple thousand pages worth of these documents, 3 weeks before Election Day, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this whole thing, which anytime they try to make this argument that this isn't political, they do things that can't be interpreted in any way other than political, because they didn't have to release all of the stuff right before the election. And of course, the media, as the word they always use for us, is they pounced on it and tried to make it this huge deal and try to elevate it, again, because the only strategy they had at this election was abortion and hating Trump. It didn't seem like they had anything else to go on. So it was like, they tried to drum it up again, and it, thankfully didn't work, or didn't work to the extent that that made a difference in the election for president. But yeah, this stuff has all been out there. It's exhausting. There's a report from, the January 6th committee. It's like, how much of this has to be out there? How much does it have to be talked about? But it will be interesting to see if a court releases it. And ultimately, I don't think it's not going to hurt Donald Trump. Does it hurt other people in the case? I think it really will probably hurt the justice system, because I think these cases, this case, and I mean the New York case, is in its own category of crushing, hurting the judicial system. But it's only going to further diminish people's confidence in the system, in the DOJ, and they should also put the price tag of the report, because my understanding, this investigation costs $50 million, at least what I've read. So $50 million could have been spent on prosecuting dangerous criminals or other people that there's more of a public interest in going after, or maybe giving it back to the taxpayers would also be a kind of a nice thing.
You can't do that in New York. What are you, crazy? They need all this money for the lawfare. And by the way, Trump says it's $100 million. I have no idea. But to me, I don't care what you're throwing out there at this point. It looks petty. It looks petulant. And the American people, they don't care. I mean, the man has been elected president. So to me, let's move on. And that's what we're going to do. Let's talk a little bit about the Supreme Court. Were you surprised that the Supreme Court sided against Donald Trump? Amy Coney Barrett, she decided that she was going to side with the liberals, and John Roberts, saying that no, Donald Trump's sentencing could not be stayed or delayed in the hush money case. Were you surprised at Amy Coney Barrett?
Yes, I was surprised that they didn't say that because the reason is the immunity, the way they've always looked, meaning the Supreme Court has looked at these immunity cases, it's immunity from the process versus the outcome, meaning the sentencing isn't what they're immune from, it's the whole process of being prosecuted. So, and you're supposed to decide the merits of the immunity issue at the earliest possible stage. So I thought they would stay it and then decide the immunity issue on its merits. Instead, I think they went for the argument, which was, well, it doesn't matter since he's not getting any jail time or fine or anything else. It doesn't really matter. So let's get the sentencing over with, and then we'll decide the immunity issue later. I still think he wins on the immunity issue, clearly on that case, meaning the merits of the immunity issue. But I am surprised they didn't stay it. But maybe there's some thinking of just sort of getting the thing over with type of thing. But it's certainly inconsistent with at least my interpretation of other immunity cases that I've read.
There has not, Jonathan, there's not been one legal eagle that I respect that has said that they have done the right thing. I mean, Andrew McCarthy, Jonathan Fahey, of course, Jonathan Turley, others, Alan Dershowitz, all of them have said that they are completely wrong on this. And so I think the only reason why they did this, and I monologued in this earlier in the hour, I think the only reason why they did go forward with this to get it all over with was it so they could simply call Donald Trump a convicted felon going into the White House. It gives them a talking point.
Yeah, I think that's the reason Alvin Bragg and Marshawn wanted this to be done with, is to be able to say 34-time convicted felon or whatever they would say. I think somebody put that on my yard sign, Donald Trump yard sign in the front yard. So they love that talking point. But it is kind of funny that they're still just riding the same, beating the same drum really on this. And if I was, king of the Democratic Party, I would say we might want to sort of change our strategy a bit, because it's becoming just tiresome. It's really a broken record, and it's really more of a symptom of laziness on policy than it is anything principled at this point, because we see how they handle all of the other cases related to their folks. They certainly don't have any problem pardoning, Hunter Biden or, death row inmates or terrorists from 9/11. And right. So it is just kind of funny that this is the thing that's the most important thing. And in New York, you have people getting set on fire in subways. I know that was Brooklyn. You have lots and lots of bad things. And this is what your DA's office, for the New York listeners out there, has been focusing on, are things that don't matter, or things like Daniel Penny, things that don't make the city any safer, but simply, promote a political agenda that, far left political agenda.
Well, I think part of what's going on, and part of my point in all this, is I don't care if they want to call him a convicted felon going into the White House, because to me, what this ultimately means is that their policies were so bad that the Democrats, their best, lost against I'm going to air quote this, convicted felon. And so I think I'm looking at it from I think probably the same perspective that you are. But for the Democrats, to me, they can't win on the substance. They also can't win on the issues. And I don't know where they go from here. It does seem like Joe Biden is doing everything he can to hamstring Donald Trump coming into office. I've got an example for you, Jonathan Fahey, straight ahead. It is 7:45, time to check the roads on WTN. Weather today, a high of 38, partly cloudy skies, right now at 32 degrees. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Jonathan Fahey is joining us on the Newsmaker hotline. So we've talked about Trump and all of his legal issues. Do you think, just very generic question, but we've got the hush money case, we've got the E. Jean Carroll case, we've got the case from the state of New York where he is accused of inflating his real estate properties. All these different, Georgia, you've got that going on. Do you think that Donald Trump will ever be free and clear of all of these things, or does the poor man have to die before he gets any peace from all of this?
Yeah, you do wonder that some of them may be kicking around after his term is over. So, yeah, you do think the Democrats, they want to keep pushing these things. Some of them should die of a sort of on their own, meaning get to finality however they come out in the next couple of years. But you could see that Atlanta case, my guess is once it gets in the hands of another district attorney, which is going to they're going to just, kill that one off. But these New York cases seem like they could just be kicking around for a long time. And if the interesting thing is Trump wins on appeal, which I think he will on the Alvin Bragg case, it will come back not for an acquittal, but it would come back for a new trial most likely. So Alvin Bragg would theoretically have an opportunity to prosecute him in 4 years on the same charges after he gets out of office if Trump wins on appeal. And it's absurd to think about, but that's what, the Democratic Party is thinking about it. And at your point before the break is a great one. It just shows how bad they are in policy, because if Trump is as bad as they say he is, it means they're even worse. But ultimately, it's funny that Trump really, it almost seemed like it made him stronger, more resolved, and more disciplined. It's incredible that if you look at the last year, if you knew of anyone that went through all of these things, getting, shot at, having these prosecutions, all of these things going on, and you had to keep your day job and run for office, no one could do it. It makes him look almost like a Superman quality, and he doesn't seem like he's fazed by it to the extent, he's mad about it, but it's not taking him off his game in any way.
No, and the thing about Judge Merchan, and I made this point, but if what Donald Trump did was so horrific and so egregious, he comes back and, no jail time, no fines, no punishment whatsoever, no probation, then to me, it just makes it look like this whole thing was feckless and they didn't really mean it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It never meant anything, even under its worst terms, meaning the most favorable terms to Alvin Bragg. The case was a nothing. It was about the argument is he should have put Stormy Daniels expense into box 1 versus box 2. That's the whole case, right? It should have been the payoff of porn star column versus the legal expense column. And even if that's true, it's a nothing, no big deal. It's not a public company. Nobody lost money. Typically, when you look at fraud cases, the question is who lost money, how much did they lose? If there's fraud within, just assuming that, there's fraud within the company and nobody loses money, nobody cares ordinarily. And Alvin Bragg, I watched as much and read as much about this case. I never heard of one case that somebody said, yes, this is comparable to the Smith case or the Jones case. We always do these types of prosecutions. So it's just, everyone knew all along the case was nothing. Even Judge Merchan knew it was nothing. And to make this seem like this is worthy of 34 felonies is nonsense. But then just to say, it's no big deal at the end, it's like, yeah, it was a big deal because you put the country through it, you put a person in New York through it, and you've undermined the system, not just for New York, but the whole country. Everyone in the country has less confidence in the judicial system after seeing what Alvin Bragg has been doing up in New York.
I hate to ask you, Jonathan, a complicated question with only 45 seconds left, but I'm going to. Do you think, I spoke with somebody about this the other day. Do you think Donald Trump would have won if all of this lawfare would not have happened? In other words, it made him more focused. It made him the victim. Everybody knows all of this is BS. And I think that this drew a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump where he typically wouldn't get it.
I think it's definitely hardened the resolve on the Republican Party side, meaning for the primaries and things like that. I think it made him much stronger there. I still think he would have won if you take it all off the table and then you are actually just looking at compare Donald Trump to Joe Biden or Donald Trump to Kamala Harris based on performance in office. I think he wins that argument. So I think he would have won. It's hard to say in hypotheticals, but it's like you look at Joe Biden's approval rating, which kind of carries over to Kamala Harris as a nominee. I think it's hovering around 38%, and it's been low 30s or low 40s, high 30s for quite some time. So typically incumbents are not hitting much above their approval rating. So I think yes, but who knows, right? Because I think Trump's campaign was phenomenal this time.
It was.
In terms of just disciplined, focused. It was on message all the time. So, but that's an interesting question. I wonder, sometimes I think, maybe he would have gotten 60%, or maybe it would have been something different. I don't know.
All right, Jonathan Fahey, always great to have you on. We'll talk again soon at 7:51. Joan Jones has the news. Coming up at 8. Joan, what you got?
Well, which one of President-elect Trump's nominees' confirmation hearings are being delayed? Also, the unusual end to an arrest in Mount Juliet over the weekend. Those stories coming up at 8 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Joan. Dan Mandis here. United Structural Systems. Man, it did snow on Friday, and people were focused on groceries and salting the driveways, but as that snow melts, as it's doing right now, there's going to be a lot of water. So you need to check your foundation for cracks in your basement for water leaks. You know, the tiniest of cracks in your basement with a snow like this, that water could end up in your home and in your basement and cause all kinds of issues. Or what if your pipes burst? If that water remains unseen, it can turn into even bigger problems like mold and wood rot and the need for structural repair. Now, if you want to stay ahead of water damage, call my friends at USS. United Structural Systems has over 30 years of experience in basement and crawl space, waterproofing, basement wall stabilization, and foundation repair. United Structural Systems, USS inspections are absolutely free, and we won't sell you unnecessary repairs either. They're simply here to help. We guarantee our best. Call USS at 615-488-7855. I've been a client for years. 615-488-7855. Find them online, USSTN.com.